Part 69 of Don't Say Schwarzenegger. In this part, we're going to cover defendant William Joelson's testimony. It's gonna get bananas. He ends up just kind of like throwing in the towel. He's sick of lying. He's sick of being here in court, being humiliated for lying. And he's sick of sticking to the narrative that the other defendants have created. And he's just over it, which I understand that. And he ends up throwing his attorney under the bus. It's incredible. So here we go. Here's a pic I found of William Joelson, and I had to censor what was in his mouth. Okay, so he's asked questions by our attorneys, and William Joelson says, I can't remember if Sean Driz ever punched a photographer, even though he was present for all of this and everybody else testified differently. Anyways, he says he can't remember if Sean ever punched a photographer. So we pull up his 2019 deposition and read it out loud to the jury, and it says, who threw the first punch? And he says, Sean. Now, this is a picture I haven't shown yet in any of my series, but this is a picture of TMZ paparazzi number 2, Robert Suraci. This is a photo that the paramedics took on the scene. Now, the police report, we knew about him because I have the police report, and it clearly said statements that both Robert and Jacob Castillon were working the nice guy that night, and both of them were beaten to unconsciousness by this group of men. And as you can see, that's a pretty huge bruise and lump on his nose, and he doesn't look happy. He looks like he just went unconscious, which he did say in the police report. But suddenly after, and I'm not saying it happened, but perhaps somebody got to him that week, went to TMZ, offered him a lot of money, just like Jacob, and perhaps that's why suddenly the whole narrative changed to, oh no, he showed up after the fight and he just gave, Jacob a ride to Cedars-Sinai to get some medical help. He was never, he wasn't even part of the civil. His name never came up as a victim. Isn't that interesting? Robert Suraci. Would love tips from anybody who knew him, knows him, TMZ, anybody. I do not give out names. Everything is anonymous. I'd love to know if he suddenly upgraded his apartment in the coming months after this in April 2015, paid off student debts. I don't know. I'd love to hear about it. Anyways, back to William Joelson testifying, and he brings up Robert Suraci. He says that TMZ PAP number 2 got involved to protect, the first one, doing the right thing at that time. Then he says that Maurice Driz and Alberto Driz fought, and that Robert Suraci was already there. Then William Joelson says that they all fled the nice guy, and they all went back to Sean Driz's apartment. At this point, our attorneys read from his 2019 deposition, and William says that Alberto Driz told William that he punched a woman. He was bragging about it. I would be that woman. At this point, Maurice starts yelling out and trying to interrupt, and this is kind of how it goes for the rest of the trial. They just start screaming. And again, Maurice, who's suffering from throat cancer, has the loudest voice and the clearest voice, and he's speaking out, and the judge had to order him to stop doing that. Okay, back to William Joelson. So here's the thing. For several years, he had been denying in his deposition, just everything, just denying that he ever kicked my brother's lifeless body in the head. It's on video. You can see it, you can pause it frame by frame. So that's why he was brought into the civil once we found out his identity. But he had been denying it. Everything changes in this moment on the stand. On the stand, William Joelson finally admits to kicking Matt in the head because the video was shown to the jury frame by frame, and it's black and white. It's not a matter of opinion. He admits to kicking Matt in the head, which is the opposite of what he said in his 2019 deposition. At this point, William admits to previously lying about it in his deposition, and I quote, I was following the advice of my attorneys. That would be Louis Adelson. Santa Monica Law Offices. Louis B. Adelson was the one representing William Joelson during these depositions. He says, I was following the advice of my attorneys at the time to lie under oath. By the way, this doesn't slip past the judge. We'll get to that. She's like, oh, we're going to report him. He should be disbarred. Okay? Pay attention. But in the next breath on the stand, William Joelson says, look, okay, I might have kicked her brother's body, but I would never, ever put my hands on a woman. Ever. And he says, and I quote, it's not in my character. Unfortunately for him, I actually did a bit of research on him At like every couple of months, I would Google him. I would Google arrests and everything using his full name, William Aubrey Joelson. And guess what I found and brought to my attorneys that brought it to the judge that said it was admissible? My research found that in January of 2019, there was a restraining order from his ex-girlfriend against him for DV. I found out in like late 2019, so October, whatever, it happened in that year, January. And I told my attorneys about it in October of 2019, so about 2 years prior to this. At this point, the judge is like, whoa, 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 asks my attorneys, she's like, is the ex-girlfriend here? She's been subpoenaed, right? And my attorneys, they messed up and they were like, no, we just found out. So, I mean, I had reminded them during the trial, but, you know, I had obviously let them have that information like 2 years prior, but they must have forgotten. So the judge tells my attorneys to get the minute orders to identify William Joelson's perjury, because she's like, we're going to go after the perjury. Yay! Then she says that Lewis Adelson is in big trouble. Like, she stops everything because this is insane to have somebody admit on the stand, like, I'm so sorry, but my attorneys told me to lie. Lewis Adelson, remember that name. The judge says, you're saying that your lawyer told you to lie. That's Lewis Adelson? Okay, so that was not lost on me. And she makes some notes. Oof. So unfortunately, William Joelson, his little moment of clarity and honesty had only lasted for like 5 seconds because he started lying on the stand again. And he says that the restraining order that was brought on him in 2019 by his ex was actually thrown out by a judge. But Judge Susan Bryant Deason for our civil, she's not an idiot, and she's so prepared, you know, like she's so prepared. She doesn't waste time, and she immediately pulls it up and she's like, yeah, no, it wasn't. Sit down. That's not what happened. Then William says his ex is a liar. She's lying. And the judge says, sorry, but there's 3 DV reports here. By the way, I know who the ex is, but I'm not going to say her name. I hope she's doing better, and I'm proud of her for taking this to court, because putting it on the record makes you hope that it makes violent men not do this again. Not for the moral reasons, because they don't have them, but for reasons of not wanting to get in trouble again. So good for her. Joelson is then asked, was Anne there? Did she act as if she was there to save someone that night? And he said yes. They said, did Anne attack anyone? William said no. This flies in the face of William Joelson's opening statement at the beginning of this trial before he had the wind knocked out of him by justice. But in the opening statement, he said, nothing about Anne's behavior showed she was there trying to save someone. Like, he literally did a 180 after how embarrassing and all the evidence and stuff. Joelson also admitted that the third plaintiff, Fendel, was not attacking anyone either. Then he admits that he did beat up the two TMZ paparazzi that wasn't caught on the security footage. And at this point, the Drizzes are losing their minds in their seats, losing their minds. Joelson then says that he saw Alberto Drizz closest to me, him, when my body was lifeless on the ground. Now our judge pulls up the restraining order that was brought against Joelson against his ex, and she reads it to the court. It says he had to stay 100 yards away from her, no contact, and he had to take 10 sessions of anger management. Then the judge says, wait a second, you kept her dog and you smashed her phone? And he says yes and no. Then she read the ex's declaration about what he did to her, and I can't really say it here, but her, and that's usually the last line if you learn about anything about DV, that's the last line before a life is taken, usually. And he took her phone and broke it because she tried to call the police, so he stopped her. And while doing this, he injured her hand. God, I hope she's okay. All right, that's the end of his testimony. On to the next part. And last thing, the ex-girlfriend of William Joelson. I know who you are, and if you or your friends are watching this, my line is always open if you ever want to talk to me, ask me any questions, completely anonymous. I hope you're okay. I've been through the same thing before. So, yeah, my heart goes out to you, and I'm proud of you.